Subscribe to Film Companion for your film fix. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.
So somebody was tweeting about festival fatigue, but not when we have Ari Aster in the house, everyone! So, the grand master of horror with just 2 films. I was telling him the other day that there are things he's put into my brain that I wish I could unsee. But the films are so haunting and just they just get inside of you. So I have to ask, if we were to open up your head, Ari, what would we find?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's all pretty boring. I try to get all the junk out in the movies. Yeah.
Does that work?
No. Gosh, that's a big question. And I don't think I know how to answer it.
So, Ari, you said that horror demands catharsis. And you have to find that catharsis, even if it means pushing the awful situations you've created all the way to their logical end and sort of going full apocalyptic on them. What do you mean by horror demands catharsis?
Well, I think what I said was that genre demands catharsis, and it's just.
So it's not horror specifically.
No, but it certainly applies to horror. But it applies to comedy as well. The catharsis is the punchline. You have a setup. You know, there needs to be a punchline. And what I was saying about catharsis was that with both of these films, I was making pretty personal movies, and I didn't know how to be. Yeah, have them closer. Yeah, I didn't know how to be totally literal about them. I didn't know how to make like a kitchen sink drama about those films because it was too personal, and it felt like it was. I'd be betraying people in my life. I'd be just
saying too much.
And at the same time, I really love genre, and I'm excited by the conventions of genre, and I'm excited by the ideas of kind of twisting them around. And so genre was a filter through which I could pass this more personal material and at the same time and kind of veil what it was, and kind of disguise what I was doing, but at the same time that challenge to find the catharsis in the material allows you to somehow break through whatever you're working against or working through, and so it ends up being therapeutic. Yeah, I'm just somebody who gets excited by movies that go all the way, and so hopefully that's what I'm doing. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to do.
So do you ever have a moment, Ari, when you, in these 2 films, in Hereditary and Midsommar, where you stopped and said, okay, this might be too far?
No. I have a couple films that I've written that I've thought that, and we'll see.
We haven't seen them yet?
No.
Oh, they're all just in the writing stage.
Yeah, well, yeah, they haven't been made yet. No, not in the sense that you mean. But going back to making more or less personal films, yes, there are times when I write something and I think, can I do this? Is this fair? And I wrestle with stuff like that. I wrestle with with the more personal aspects of the film. But as far as just is this too sensational? Is this too violent? Is this too? I don't know. But I was surprised actually that we had to cut a lot out of Midsommar to get an R rating. Although I know it's going to be much further censored here. But I was surprised that we got away with as much as we did to get the R rating, because there is some more.
What more could you possibly do?
We had to cut out stuff. There is
Tell all. What have you cut?
Oh, it's just we just linger on things longer. It's just, you know.
So that's a question I had. You know, how do you know how much to linger? Because, you know, we're seeing, and I don't want to sort of give away too much for people who still haven't seen the film, but, you know, you're seeing a broken face. How do you decide that I can linger for this long but no more?
It all just comes down to your gut and your instincts. I don't like gratuitous violence, but I'm also a big fan of, you know, body horror, and I love David Cronenberg, and so I'm very excited by image making, and especially kind of grotesque image making, but I need it to be story centric. I need it to be tied to what we're watching, and I need whatever that image evokes in the audience. I need that to be appropriate. But again, it's all just instinct. I'm not really sitting there doing doing the math. I trust that since I don't really like gratuitous violence, what I'll be doing won't be gratuitous to me, because I don't want to do what I don't like. So I think ultimately any filmmaker, it comes down to their taste and their judgment. I think all filmmakers begin as an audience first, and you watch things and you decide, I don't like that, I really like that, and then you get the opportunity to make a film, and it's time to put these things into action. And so it's, you know, the line between a spectator and a filmmaker is, you know, it's very thin. It just takes the action of making a film. But
Ari, what I love about the films is that they have an emotional authenticity. Like you said, they're rooted in something. And you know, for Midsommar, there's a point where she's being asked about her partner. Does he feel like home to you? Do you feel held by him? Those are questions you would ask in any relationship. So the film works as a relationship film without the horror elements. Hereditary would work as a family drama, even if you didn't have the self-decapitating scene. Is this something you're very mindful of when you're creating? That there needs to be something more than just these grotesque images, which are also incredible.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Hereditary is about the family for me. I mean, it becomes sort of a nightmare, and it adopts this nightmare logic that becomes more and more central to the film as it goes along. But ultimately, it is about a family that's suffering, and the suffering becomes so intense and so unbearable that, like, the fabric of their lives and of the film itself, like, begin to tear apart. And that was the idea. The idea was not, I want to make a movie with decapitations. And then Midsommar was always a breakup movie. I wrote it while I was going through a breakup, and for me it's a relationship drama that it's a surrealist, expressionist relationship drama that's also kind of a straightforward contribution to the folk horror genre. That kind of acknowledges what came before it and tries to twist that around and do something new with it, hopefully.
Do you know if your ex-partner has seen it?
No.
Worth finding out.
I'm sure she hasn't. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I can't speak to that.
Are you written everything that you've made? It's all, even the shorts were written by you. So tell me a little bit about the writing process. Is there a ritual? Do you write, I don't know, every day? Do you write better in the morning? What is that specific process like?
I write in the morning, I guess it's a little easier to talk about right now because I'm writing right now. But I read a lot while I write, and I often sit down to write. And in the beginning, that's kind of futile because I don't have enough material to write. And so you sit down and it's very painful in the beginning because you're trying to do something that you don't have enough. I don't try to write unless there's something I want to write, but structure is very important. And so
there's a thought, and then you sit down and try and structure it. Is that how it works?
it's usually a few images, it's a theme, it's something I want to get out of my system. I usually have a few set pieces that I want to do, like a few big scenes that are exciting, and I want to get to those, and I have an idea of the structure, but outlining is very important, and I take it's usually about 3 or 4 months of maybe 3 months of really trying to fill this thing up and make sure that you don't have any scenes that are extraneous or that are just there to fill time. And then you get to the point where you filled it up too much, and all my scripts end up being, twice as long as they should be. Hereditary, the first cut was 3 hours. Midsommar, the first cut was 4 hours. And there's a director's cut of Midsommar that came out in the States and that will be available at some point. That's 3 hours long, but which I'm not proud of. I wish I could be more efficient.
How do you direct actors to do some of the things that you want them to do?
I shot list everything before I shoot, and so I come up with the blocking and the camera movement and the shot sequencing before I even talk to my director of photography, and so I come in with blocking and I tell the actors this is ultimately how the scene is going to play. It's kind of a dictatorial way of working, and I'm trying to loosen up a little bit. But that kind of, it gives them kind of, at least the technical steps, the choreography. And then you talk a lot before you shoot, and you make sure you're on the same page, and then on set, if something's not working, I'll tell them. If something is working, I won't. I'll just leave them to it. And if something's working but not in the way I expected, then, it's my job, I guess, to think for a second, like, does this work? Do I want to risk throwing this off by, by bringing it to the actor's attention, or do I allow it? It's very hard to talk about because all actors are different as well. Some actors want more help, and they want a more active relationship. Some actors want to be left alone. Some actors don't want to be given the blocking. That's hard because that's how I work. So that's something we have to get through. Some actors love that. It's all just a matter of bending to what's in front of you, which is hard for me because I'm kind of a control freak. But I find that when I don't bend and when I don't accommodate life, then the movie suffers, and so it's I don't know, it's a lot like life. You just you can obsess over your plans, but ultimately
Something else happens.
Something else happens, and it's usually something better. So,
have you found over the two films, and of course the shorts, a way to find to allow things to happen? To allow for improvisation. Is it getting easier the more you direct?
There has been no improvisation in my films.
At all?
Not really. I don't forbid it. It just hasn't happened, and I think it's because the plan is so solid. I would like to have more improvisation in my films. I would love to find a way to do that. there are certain filmmakers who are able to do that like formalist, extremely, anal aesthetic thing. And they're also able to like have the actors just like run rampant. Like Scorsese is the best at that. And I look at those films and I'm amazed. And I would love to get there. So far, with these two features and with the shorts, I always encourage it. I say in the beginning, like, and if you want to throw anything in there, and I think that there's another ingredient that I have not found, because ultimately, or maybe an actor that I haven't worked with who's gung-ho to kind of mess with things. But it might be me. It might just be that I think that I'm more welcoming to to new things than I actually
I was
am.
just going to ask, and I don't mean this to be rude, but are people scared of you?
No. No, it's the opposite. I'm extremely Jewish in the way that I direct, which is that I apologize instead of saying thank you. And
I'm so sorry, but can you do this?
yes,
Is it like that?
Exactly. I think I'm accommodating to a fault. I might not be actually accommodating, but I always feel guilty for just even being alive, and so it's like, so on a set where I'm directing people, there is this part of me that feels like this is wrong, like I should not be directing anything. So no, I don't think people are scared of me. I think people might be scared to mess with the plan because it's so set, and I know that I can become pretty single-minded on set. But no, if anything, I think I need to learn to be more assertive.
I read that you don't like to do coverage.
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because you only have so much time in a day, and if you're shooting coverage, you're not shooting other stuff. Coverage is important sometimes, and there are scenes that I cover, but I try not to cover them with just shots that could, what I do is I shot sequence, and that's what a lot of filmmakers do, which is that instead of, let's get a wide of the whole scene here, and let's get a medium from here, and let's get, a medium from here, and let's get a two-shot from here, and then we'll cut it all together later. That ends up being television, and it looks sloppy. I will cover a scene in a way that's designed, meaning we'll begin with a shot that maybe covers the first 2 pages of a scene, and we'll have no coverage of that. But then that takes us to a place where at this point in the scene we can now go to, let's say, over the shoulders, and so we'll get over the shoulders. But the thing is, I could, I guess, in those over the shoulders also do the first 2 pages of that scene, but that's a waste of time, and it's also a waste of the actor's energy if I don't intend to use that.
You said that the film will tell you what it wants in the editing room, and you will either listen or not at your own peril. When did you learn to listen to what the film wants?
Sometimes what works in the script isn't necessary in the film. Sometimes there's a piece of information in this one scene that was absolutely essential in the script, but then somehow it's found its way into the performances, and we get it, we know. And so it's a matter of just being awake to what is working, what's not.
But that must have been excruciating, to cut that much out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Midsommar, I think we cut like 30 scenes out, maybe 40, a lot of scenes. Maybe not 40, but 30, I think. And then Hereditary was, I think, about 20 scenes, maybe more. And chopping scenes down. But the thing is, that's a lot of scenes, but this is what editing is. This is how it works. So it's not unique to me. But I have found that post-production on those 2 films was, very painful. I don't know. And then you have to make calls that are very hard. Like, well, if we cut this, we lose this piece of information, and we lose this part of the character's history, and we lose this moment, and this is very beautiful footage, we're cutting that out. Can the movie survive that? And I find that sometimes you just have to do it, and then it's either a relief, and then 2 days later you're happy you did it, especially when you watch the movie through, and then sometimes 2 days later you're really regretting it, so you can always put it back. But, I think I regret it a little bit less with Hereditary than Midsommar. And then I think that's why Midsommar we ended up doing the director's cut. And by the way, I should say I'm very lucky to be working with A24 because they allowed me to put out a director's cut. They're great.
So Ari, you got into horror at a very young age. I read that you had already seen Clockwork Orange and Blue Velvet by the time you were 11. So not horror, but disturbing films, really disturbing content. And you said that you hated both of these films, but you kept watching them again and again to figure out why they resonated with you. And you developed a taste for mean-spirited storytelling. Do you see your own films as mean-spirited?
It's funny. I know I said all these things. I'm just trying to remember, like, what are these interviews that I said this in? I didn't hate Blue Velvet and Clockwork Orange. I was deeply affected by them, and I saw them when I was too young. And now they are among my favorite films. Oh, right, I was talking with Rob Eggers. That's when I said this. Because we were talking about movies that affected us as kids. Yeah. And so now Blue Velvet for me is like top 5. I love Clockwork Orange. And I love, but I mean, of Kubrick's films, I'm the most obsessed with Barry Lyndon, which I think is his funniest. Yeah, those were 2 films that really affected me because they felt kind of evil, and I didn't know why they existed because I was 11 years old and I was thinking why is this something, and then I kept returning to them, and then I found that I really only wanted to see movies like that, and I don't know what it was, but for a long time, and that's what I think got me into. Well, I was probably already into horror films, but I think the horror films that I had seen before those were kind of a little bit more superficial, and those were getting at something more existential and painful.
Elemental. Yeah.
Exactly. I just found that I sought movies like that out for a long, long time, and just really got into dark comedy and became obsessed with people like Chris Morris and like true satire, and true satire has real teeth. There are a lot of films that come out that call themselves satire or are tagged as satire, but they end up kind of handing you their thesis and saying by the end, this is bad and this is good, which is the opposite of satire. Satire should feel a little bit evil as you.
It should bite.
Yeah, it should bite. And so that was something that really I couldn't get enough of that when I was a teenager. But again, I don't know. It's just
But is there a difference between bite and being mean-spirited? Or is it the same thing?
Oh, no, I mean, I don't know how to... No, yeah, of course. I guess I did say I got excited by mean-spirited films. But that is just to say I became excited by ruthless material. I think ruthless is maybe more appropriate than mean-spirited.
Because your films are ruthless, but they're not mean-spirited, for me at least.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that they're not mean-spirited. I think I've made stuff that's mean-spirited, and that's never the goal. So I wouldn't agree with myself when I say that mean-spirited work is the work that gets me the most excited. But growing up, it was the work that I think it was probably the first trend that kind of fascinated me beyond the usual fascinations growing up and as a kid and loving Indiana Jones. It was the first.
Did you love Indiana Jones?
Yeah, of course.
Somehow I can't imagine that.
No, and I love Spielberg. I'm a huge fan of Spielberg's. Nice. Yeah, although I've talked about this before, but I think AI is is maybe his best film. I love it. Yeah. That and Empire of the Sun are my two favorites.
Right.
But I love E.T., I love Close Encounters, I love Jaws. I mean, he's amazing. He's the greatest.
You said somewhere that you would love to do like find your way into a musical, romantic comedy, try other genres. And I'm just thinking, what would an Ari Aster romantic comedy look like?
I know. I don't know. That's why I want to do it. I want to find a way. But I love romantic comedies. Yeah. I mean, those are also kind of becoming extinct. But I grew up on those.
Nice. I would be first in line to see that. Okay, guys. Questions? Yeah. Where are the mics?
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. So, like you had said earlier that you're planning to do more projects. So, if you do, like, this is a suggestion, sir. Like, if you do any project, like a folk horror project, which you had done like Midsommar, I would suggest, sir, please, like, you could consider India's rich cultural diversity or the folk stories from India, because we've got a lot of great culture, sir, and which we highlighted, in your production house, like, it can get a spotlight if the right director is chosen for the.
So there's no question, there's advice.
Yeah, this is like a suggestion, not an advice. I am the one who said
suggestion.
Yeah, just a suggestion, sir.
Come here.
I mean, I would love to find a way to do that. Even just being here for a week, it's an amazing place, and I've already been thinking like, wow, this would be quite the environment to make a film in. So yeah.
You'd spoken about movies affecting you as a child, and it's really strange because you also spoke about Cronenberg, and I ended up watching The Fly when I was 14, and I think it's taken me from then to now to kind of completely process what I've seen. Because there were like moments where I would genuinely like, I wouldn't say hate, but like really wonder, why was this movie made? Why did I have to watch it? But I understand that now, and I'm going to ask this just genuinely, out of curiosity, for a filmmaker, a horror filmmaker, how do you sleep at night knowing that other people are like disturbed
Not
about
sleeping.
your work? Does that ever factor in? Like, do you ever consider that?
I don't know. I mean, how do I sleep at night? I don't know. I think I'm being a little cheeky when I say this, but isn't the role of the artist to like take your sickness and put it into other people?
Just want to nerd out with you for a bit. Like, I found that motherhood and grief are like two themes you've explored, and that's something horror as a genre explores as well. I want to know what is your take on it and how you, as a filmmaker, incorporate it into your work. And secondly, you're talking about catharsis. What I found interesting is not only were you building up towards a cathartic moment, but also your protagonist was kind of inching towards a corruption of self. So could you talk about motherhood, grief, and the corruption of self leading to a cathartic experience?
It's a good question, and because it's very specific, it's hard to answer right off the bat. I'm going to say with motherhood and grief, anything I say now will not be as articulate as whatever the film says. So I'll leave it at that, except to say yes, that is like a rich tradition in horror films, and I feel that it does. It allows for a different, maybe more dreamlike way of processing stuff that I think you can only go so far with if you're being utterly grounded in your treatment of that material. And then corruption of self is certainly something that's at play in both of the films. With Hereditary, that film is about trauma, and you could read the ending as being, oh, this kid is now possessed and he's, one of the kings of hell. Or you could read that as maybe, I don't know, maybe as a metaphor for trauma utterly transforming somebody in a way that's irrevocable. And for me, that's what the movie is. But I also wanted it to be, I also wanted it to be something that could be read literally and is literal. Like he's also payment. And so that's one thing. And then with Midsommar, I wanted to make a film about a codependent relationship. And I guess there's an irony at the end, which is that our main character has moved from a very dysfunctional codependent relationship, and she's moved into a much more functional codependent relationship. And which one is more upsetting?
To wrap, can I just ask you, what's the last film that terrified you?
I don't really get terrified anymore by films.
At all?
No, but the filmmaker whose work bothers me the most and disturbs me is Peter Greenaway, and I've talked about him before. But there's a film called The Baby of Macon, which he made not long after To Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, which is a film I've talked about because it really bothered me as a kid. And The Baby of Macon, I rewatched again recently, and it really affected me as a kid. I watched it not long after Cook the Thief because I'm a masochist. And that's a film that feels really... first of all, he's an amazing stylist, and he really just he's a perfectionist in a way that is pretty inspiring, and a world builder in a way that's very inspiring. But his films just radiate this misanthropic energy. Like, he clearly just hates people, and he's clearly disgusted by the human body. He expects nothing of people. Like, he doesn't even really grant his characters personalities. There's a coldness to his films that really, really disturb me. And I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. But I never enjoy the feeling that is provoked in me while I watch his films. And so I would say he's somebody that I think twice before I watch one of his films, because I know that they're going to bother me. Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad to know someone's bothering you, like you're bothering us. I thank you so much, and cannot wait to see what you do next. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for being so lovely. Thanks.